headsets are an essential on your mountain bike, and when they're working well, their smoothness is almost unnoticeable. But when things go wrong and they're not working as they should, well, it's a whole different kettle of fish. But here's a 101 explainer on all things headset. For modern mountain bikes, we're pretty much exclusively talking about threadless design headsets, or Aheadsets. The A is deliberate, that's a brand name. Came out in the early 90s, and thankfully, because mountain biking was modern, it embraced this new style of a headset. And it was much better than what we had before, which was a threaded style, whereby the fork had a thread on it, and there was a certain lock ring and preload collar, and essentially it was a faff. Mountain bike took to this new style very, very early. It came out in the 90s, and it's pretty much the dominant style. Okay, that's the style of headset. Then we have to divulge all the different types, but that's next. How does it all work? Okay, when you're tightening your preload cap, well, you could tighten it all as much as you wanted, because essentially all that's doing is pulling the star nut, which is in your fork, or your compression ring in your fork. It won't do anything without undoing the stem first. That's why this stem, and why this design is really clever. The stem is integral to the design, and it needs to be free floating to allow the fork steerer to slide up into it as it compresses everything together. So that top cap is pulling everything down, which then pulls the fork steerer up. A little bit confusing, I know, but it's why it's essential to have a small gap at the top of your stem to allow the fork to move up. So you're tightening it all together. The stem is loose. The stem is then going to compress this upper dust cover. Your upper dust cover might also contain the compression ring. Sometimes they're one piece. And as that compresses, this angled edge on the compression ring will force the bearing into the cup, whichever style it is, and it will put pressure on it. That pressure continues effectively through, and as you're pulling the fork up, well, at the other end of the assembly, we've got this crown race. So this is sat on the fork, and this is being pushed up into the lower bearing. So we've got the lower bearing there. Again, note how we've got this angled contact. So that's pushing into the upper cup, and all of it should be, when we've got that Goldilocks perfect amount of preload on the top cap, allow you to just spin your bars, effortless and smoothless. But we're going to start with cups, and this is the external bit, or could be external because sometimes they're internal, but we'll start with the simplest, and that's this base one here, which is an external cup. You'll see it sitting outside of your frame, and it's press fitted in. So that's your first one, an external cup. As head tubes evolved and tube shapes got bigger, we then had semi-integrated. They go by different names from different manufacturers, but essentially we've still got a cup which will be press fitted into the frame, but as you can see, it's very, very slim. There's only this small line that you'd see on the outside. They're sometimes called zero stack. Next, some frames are going to have their own integrated bearing seats. So opposed to having a cup with an angle, the frame will actually be engineered to have these angular sections on them. So this headset here is of that style. So these bearings will just sit directly on the frame. The different styles have got different pros and cons, but it's essential that you use the right cup style for your frame. The diameter of these cups, well, changes radically, and we've had such an evolution in headset sizes that, well, there's lots of evolution of cup sizes too. So there's 30, 34, 36, 44, 56, and I think the latest is 62, but as with all things that are A standard, well, they move to becoming lots of different standards. Now, to add into the mix of these external zero stack or kind of inset designs, or the direct in frames, we're also going to have a mix. So some frames will have maybe a zero stack or very low insert one, and then they'll have an external lower. There is a real minefield of different standards, as I mentioned. Whilst cup sizes have changed format, we've also had changes to the steer. So this is the central section of your fork that runs all the way through from the top where the stem clamps to the bottom where the crown is. And initially these were all inch, then we changed to 1.1/8. There was a brief moment where we had an oversized standard just on Gary Fisher bikes, but that melted away until Freeride appeared, and well, we needed burly single crown forks that could take lots of big impacts. Manitou proposed that we have this 1.5 straight through steer, so it was really big, really oversized, did offer lots of stiffness, but it was also a little bit heavy because it had to have big stems to match. So now we've got a new evolution. We have 1.5 on the bottom, and then we have 1.125" on the top. And this is almost a standard. Apart from, well, Giant has kind of created its Overdrive 2, which is a slightly bigger diameter on the top. And then on some e-bikes, we've got 1.85 inch lower. So we've got a different taper again. So it is always changing. For the most part, we're on 1.125" at the top and 1.5 on the bottom. Lots of information, so hopefully you're bearing up. So bearings are critical to how a headset functions because we need this smooth transfer of forces, and bearings are really good at this. Bearings in their simplest form are essentially ball bearings. We've got some caged ones here. So we've got a simple cage that holds the ball bearing in place. We've then got this crown race here has got a dedicated edge, a round sculpted edge where the bearing will sit and transfer that load. And then this cup has also got a similar round edge. Fitted together, transfers that load really smoothly. We could see the bearings there. We could see the ball bearings. That means that, well, sealing it might be problematic. So with a ball bearing like that, we've got to apply lots of grease and keep on top of it. Cartridge bearings, something like this, are much better. But how do you transfer the load? Well, with angles. I'll explain. So the outer race will have this angled edge on it, and the inner race will have often a different, but it could be the same, angled edge. And it's that creates the angular contact bearing. So we're forcing them together, but they're still able to move freely. How they're squidged together and how you get that transfer is down to the cup design and this compression ring. So this compression ring is designed to fit this bearing specifically. So this one is a 45, so that's this lower chamfer, and then a 36 on the inside. So they have to mate together really tightly to transfer that load smoothly. Likewise, we need this same chamfer to match on the inside of the cup, which it does. As you can imagine, there's lots of subtly different profiles. So we've got these caged ball bearings, you've got loose ball bearing headsets as well, and then with these angular contact bearings, you might have roller bearings as well, and even with these designs, you've got 45-45 or 36-36 or mixed 45-36. There's lots of different ones, so you need to be sure that you're getting the right ones for your headset. Frame design is always evolving, and some designers are listening to consumer demand, and that demand has been for a cleaner looking cockpit, and some designers have chosen to mimic the roadies and gone for internal cable routing. Yep, I know we've had it before, and I know there's some detractors to this new version where we're going through the upper headset bearing for this super clean look. It can be a clean look, but it does mean that your headset is going to have to be different for different designs of this internal cable routing. There's designs where it goes in underneath the stem. Obviously, with some mountain bike stems being very short, that's not always going to work. So other designs have to go in side by side. And that means that you need, well, a whole different stem setup and a different headset setup too. So the cap that will cover has to be in a different orientation depending where the hole is. We've got 2 iterations just here. Then you're going to need a different compression ring, and there's different versions of those too. So this one here has got a nice gap on the front, great for front routing, but obviously not very good for side routing. What you'll need for your specific headset, well, that'll be down to the design and the brand of bike that you've got. As you might imagine, when we're plumbing delicate hoses and delicate cables through an upper headset bearing, well, there's sometimes interface fit issues. And one of those things might be as the bars turn, those hoses, well, could get pinched or they could get trapped. So some designs create a rotational limiting headset assembly. Some of it can be at the lower crown where you'll have a crown race that's designed to limit steering. But this one from FSA is quite clever. We've got a relatively normal, for these internal headset cable routing designs, a compression ring, so the hoses can go either side. And then we've got this upper section that has a little button and then a clamp at the top to hold it in place. It also guides the cables a little bit better. Now, depending on the design of the frame, you may have a little section like this. And this bit slots into this upper race and means that, well, the frame stops the rotation of the bars. And that can be really useful if you've got fork to frame interface issues, which happens with some designs, or you've got this internal cable routing. So another headset standard, another style that you have to fit and suit for your specific bike. but many brands, FSA included, have got a simple step-by-step process on choosing your next headset. First up is, do you have internal through the headset cable routing? That's a simple yes/no. Do you need a rotational limiting headset? Again, that's a sort of yes/no. It will be down to the frame set that you've got, and it will be down to the frame set as to which style of rotational limiting device you've got. Next step is what the headset cups are like. Again, you'll be sort of set by this one, whether it will be the frame has got drop-in ones, or it's got a zero stack, very low height, or you've got external cups. Okay, the next bit, you're gonna have to break the calipers out and do a lot of measuring. You need to measure the frame very precisely. You need to measure what headset bearings you need, and some of that will be down to the next thing you need to measure, which is the steerer tube. Is it tapered? What style of tapered? So make sure you get all those measurements in, and okay, it is a more engaging process, but it's not the minefield that you might think it was. Hopefully this headset explainer has been useful and helpful, because it can be a bit of a minefield finding out what headset you need, because there are lots of different standards and lots of different specific designs for specific bikes. But now more than ever, a headset is a fit and forget affair, so hopefully we've helped.